Hey, what's up, everybody?
Hey, guys.
Welcome to Into. This is a live interactive talk show about gay issues. I'm your resident psychotherapist, Matt Dempsey.
And I'm your comedian co-host, Jimmy Fowley, and I wish I hadn't put the pressure to develop a new joke every week. And we're here every Monday at 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, and we're streaming live from www.into.show, and you can follow us on social media at Into Talk Show.
That's right, and this is super live and super interactive. We really want you guys to call in, so please do that with your questions. The number is 323-522-5482, 323-522-5482. The number's up on your screen. We're also on Facebook Live, too. Actually, under mine, Matthew J. Dempsey Psychotherapy. So you can go there, and you can also comment there with any questions that you guys have.
Great, and without further ado, we're just going to jump into tonight's topic, which is breakups.
Whoa.
Intense.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
There's a lot to talk about.
It's so devastating. I feel like it's pretty much the worst thing you can, go through in terms of, so like for some people, other than like a personal loss or something very traumatic, breakups can be very traumatic for a lot of people.
Yeah, breakups they're difficult, because it actually is a loss. You're losing the other person, you're losing that relationship, and it can be a lot. It can be a lot for us to process and for us to understand. It can, as relationships do anyway, can bring up a lot of stuff for us, and so the loss of a relationship can really stir up our shit too.
Totally, and it can feel like sometimes embarrassing, or sometimes it feels like a failure, even though it's a normal part of relationships. You grow and you still gain things from it, but there's something, at least for me, when it's over, it's kind of like, oh, it didn't work out, and there were mistakes made, or you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. It's really easy for us to gauge the success of a relationship based on its longevity, and really just kind of how long it can last. And if it gets cut short at any point, it can feel as though that's a failure. It's a lot more challenging for us to be really present, really mindful about where we're at right here and right now, and just to be able to understand the success that can be, from a relationship just from existing in that moment, regardless of how long it lasts. But it's interesting, actually, because it kind of makes me think about this interview with Gloria Steinem that I saw, where she talks about how we're socialized to believe that we're supposed to find, among other things, we're supposed to find one person at an early age, and we're supposed to be with them through the rest of our lives. But a lot of times, most of the time, that doesn't really happen. And so when it doesn't, we can easily feel as though we failed.
Yeah,
that we really fucked something up, that we were supposed to get this one thing right and we couldn't do it. And what does that mean about us and our lovability and our, ability to be in a successful relationship? And she goes on to say that she believes that, we should have, 2, 3, 4 great loves in our lives, maybe even more, but we shouldn't have to feel so confined to just that one person, in our lives. So
how many great loves in your life do you feel like you've had?
Whoa, Jimmy, coming at me
hot
with the personal questions.
Matt is back from break, and he's ready to be grilled.
That's really, really a tough question for me to answer. I would say I've been fortunate that I've gotten to experience relationships, of a few different relationships. I would say probably great loves.
Because that's a hard question.
I would maybe say probably 2. About 2.
Same.
Really? What was your longest relationship? Listen to me jumping to talking about longevity, even when I was saying that shouldn't be the gauge for success.
No, but it's so
I'm curious,
normal.
Though.
It's so normal to do, to compare, and I feel like, especially being a gay guy, like it's so much harder to have a long relationship.
Yeah.
Because I also feel like, and you could probably you have so much more to say on it, or insight on this, but like when you're like a straight boy and you're going through like elementary school, middle school, and like 7th grade, and you're like dating, you're having these like short, like nothing relationships, but you're like kind of, it's like the training wheels. I feel like for us, some of us don't come out until we're like 18, 19, 20, 30, 40. So we're like, I feel like we're back in 7th grade.
Yeah.
Starting all over again.
Totally. We're at a very, there's so much of a different kind of developmental process for us, especially when it comes to romantic and love relationships, that you're right, we're not really getting started until we eventually come out and we start the dating process, So for so many of us, it can feel like, oh, we're kind of like teenage girls going through something, and we might be in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, you know what I mean? It really can be at any age. And nobody really preps us for that. Nobody really tells us that that's going to be a bit of our experience emotionally through this whole thing. So we can feel like, what the F is wrong with me that I'm going through a lot of these things that like teenagers are going through, but I'm at this other age. And so we can feel like that somehow is also another failure, that's another indication that we're broken or there's something damaged about us. And that can just fuel so much more of our shit when we're in a relationship.
And so, like, be okay with being vulnerable and being where we're at, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
You can't will yourself to be more mature just because it feels embarrassing to be wherever you're at. But I relate to that a lot.
Yeah, and it will just amplify things that much more when a breakup does happen, because then it will feel like, oh yeah, there it is. There's the proof in the pudding that there is something wrong with me.
Totally.
That there is something damaged, that I can't make relationships work, instead of just allowing ourselves to move through, kind of like, fumble and fall and move through some of those awkward learning moments of dating.
I think you're going for a question. I had a question for you.
Yeah,
but
go ahead.
We can do that.
No, I'm just looking good.
This is so, like, your personal opinion on this, but also like your professional opinion. What's the best way to have a breakup happen? Because you know what I mean, it's a weird thing. You know it's coming and it's a conversation. Unless you're like,
well, not everybody knows it's coming, right? Like sometimes people get blindsided.
Or I mean, the person who's like, okay, I'm gonna break up. I know sometimes you have that conversation.
So is the question, if you're going to end a relationship, what's the best way of doing that? What do you think?
I think it's like, first of all, in person, because I think you're like a monster if you do it like any other way, right? I mean, unless it's like an abusive situation where you like need boundaries, but
Okay, so in person, what else?
It's in person, and I mean, that's really all I have for you right now, Matt.
All right. I mean, look, I think that regardless of how it happens, I think that anything that can maybe be a little bit more personal, so if it is in person, I think that can just, lend itself a little bit better to a breakup that's obviously going to be challenging anyway. But yeah, if you can be in person and have that conversation more directly, that would be ideal. And also, not to mince words, it's really easy for us to go to a variety of excuses as why, and like, I'm just not in the right place or whatever, you know what I mean? But to just have a real openness and directness about what it is. And sometimes that can be really difficult. It's the reasons why maybe sometimes we can sabotage a relationship, because it's easier for us to exit that way.
Yeah.
Than it is to say.
If you're one of my exes, it's all making sense.
We're pulling the pieces together tonight, but it sometimes can be easier to do it that way, because then at least there's a concrete excuse that we can point to and say, I really fucked things up, and this happened and that happened, and that's why things had to end. As opposed to just having an honest conversation about, I'm not feeling what I used to feel. This doesn't feel like the right fit for me anymore. This connection isn't there for me in a way that it once was, or whatever. Because that's a lot more challenging, because then you have to open up and talk about your needs. Like, my needs aren't being met, and that's a vulnerable thing. So it's a lot scarier to do that.
Yep. And also, if you're like a people pleaser like I am, you feel like you're gonna break the person. Like, you feel like, oh my God, I can't tell you that my feelings have changed, because I feel like for me personally, it's been easier, like you're saying, to sabotage a relationship, because it's so uncomfortable to be like, I don't feel that way, because then it makes it feel like it's my fault, and I feel embarrassed and all this stuff, as opposed to But what's such a interesting like fact about people pleasing, it always ends up sabotaging you even more, because if I'm like, oh, I don't want to really hurt this person, and I don't want to tell them how I feel, they can actually handle that, and that's like really healthy and normal.
Yeah.
But to put them through hell and be like weird and like, and then like, you know, have all this anger about whatever, and to create problems that don't exist, that's actually the damaging part, you know?
Yeah. I mean, just on top of the fact that a relationship is ending and is just challenging anyway because it's a loss like any other,
Yeah.
then to have to, you know, contend with a lot of the other less honest and communicative, you know, explanations that might be there. It just adds extra layers to a situation that's already tough anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally.
But why don't we go to some questions?
This is so intense. I'm so curious what the viewers think of. They're like, damn. This
Well,
is
okay,
very
so
real.
we've got some actually really great questions. We got one from @SuperVic1976 wants to know, is it normal to continue trying to be friends with an ex to show you're there, or is it better to just let go? Thoughts, Jimmy?
Interesting. I'm always into having the friendship try to happen, but sometimes the other person's not ready for it, or I've been in the situation where I haven't been ready for it. Or even like you go on a couple dates and they're like, I just want to be friends, and then you're kind of like, I'm not really vibing you as a friend, like, no offense. Like,
Yeah.
is that, you know, like, is that horrible to say?
No, I don't think so, because it's a different relationship that we have. When we are in a love relationship, a romantic relationship with somebody else, it's different. Of course, there's going to be elements of friendship that are there, but it's a very different dynamic that happens when we're actually dating somebody. And so if that relationship ends, we might not necessarily be friends with them. It also might not be the healthiest thing for us. It might not just be the right fit in terms of friendship. But it's not just a given that it should be, or that we have to allow that friendship to happen. So my answer to this too is that you don't ever have to be friends with an ex. Just decide whether or not it feels like it could be the right thing for you, and if it is at any point, then you can have a conversation with the other person about it and just check in and see if they're in the same place. But you don't have to. There's not any rule on that. I would also say, especially because the question is, you know, that they, you know, if we should be friends with an ex to show that you're there, to show that you're there for them. You want to check in on the intention, because the friendship should be because there might be some part of that relationship that you could maintain with them, but knowing that that's coming from a need that you have. Right? Like if there's something that you could benefit from being in a friendship with them, not necessarily because it would be the good thing for them.
Gotcha, because then you're like, in your mind, you're trying to like, you're not taking care of yourself because you're like still wrapped up in them, kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think we had a call. We have a call? All right. Hey, caller, are you there?
Yes.
Hey, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name is JR. Comes from San Diego.
Hey, JR.
JR.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for calling in.
Thanks for calling. What's your question?
I've been waiting for this topic to come out. I've been waiting for this topic to come out since the show started.
Really?
Oh, awesome.
You knew it was coming.
It was coming at some point. And this kind of brings me back to a video that Matt did with Kyle.
Yeah. I did with Kyle Krieger. We did a video because we used to date, and so we did
about being friends with your ex.
That's right.
So just for now, when you guys were talking about this conversation, that I just recently broke up with my husband, actually, and we're just separated for now. And we're trying to be friends, and we went out a couple times, and it's just like kind of awkward, the feeling.
Really?
You know, it's like so can you continue to like try and build up on that, like try to be friends, or do you just give up?
Well, I have a couple questions. How, just so I can kind of like picture this, and not that it matters, but how long were you guys married for, and how long did you guys date before that?
So we were together for a total of 3 years. We dated for 1 year, and we actually July 19th is our 2-year anniversary.
When was it that you guys separated?
We've been separated since the middle of May.
Oh, okay. So that's pretty soon, or pretty recent.
Pretty recent, yeah.
Okay.
Did one like big thing happen, or did you guys kind of feel like you're just in different places?
I think we just developed into like two different people. You know, I for the most part, I think he got too comfortable. Like he just thought that, you're married, you have it already in the bag.
Yeah, I
So
feel
he
that.
kind of like just stopped trying. So I kind of felt like I was the only one trying to.
Or like we'll hook up again, and then it's kind of like
Totally.
more complicated. But
Well, it becomes the long goodbye, and generally if you're trying to have a friendship very shortly after the love relationship has ended, chances are the intention is going to be a little bit off. The intention
Yeah.
is probably going to be more about how can I maintain having you in my life because the loss of you in my life is too difficult. So I'll try to find some way of having you there. But then without having any buffer, without having any kind of like clear, kind of marker between the two relationships, you then just tend to take on, kind of a continuation of the romantic part. JR, are you back on? Is this JR, are you there?
he hates us. JR? Yay!
Yay, JR, you're back.
That sounded like a JR gasp to me. So yeah, we kind of were chatting about your situation. I don't know if you got a chance to hear it on the show.
I heard a little bit of it because it went offline.
Okay.
No, oh no. How scary. But we're back.
Got it. Okay.
You guys, this show is happening.
It's a little rough, this show. Okay, so JR, to recap, we were just saying that you might want to give it a little bit of time if it's been a handful of years that the two of you have been together and you've just split in May. You might want to give it a little bit of time. Is there any reason why it feels as though you need to get into a friendship at this stage, a couple months after?
Well, there's like a lot of things that we still share in common. I mean, as far as like, the household we had. And so we still maintain, communication basically like on business purpose kind of.
Fuck.
But at the same time, you still want to stay amicable.
Right.
That's so tough with the house.
Stuff together,
Absolutely. I mean, look, you have built a life together, and there's going to be a lot of logistics that are in place with that too. You also have the option of navigating how you might be able to, reasonably share some of those things. If you have a house and it's unrealistic for each of you or one of you to move out, then you might have to share a house. If there's work that you guys are doing together, I mean, these are definitely layers that will make it more complex and more challenging. But you could be able to function within that in terms of just, staying in touch with each other about the logistics and not necessarily have to launch into a friendship at this point. Is that
you were saying earlier that, my feelings have changed and I just don't feel the same anymore. That love for you, the love that I had for you is not the same anymore.
Got it.
Do you think you've been
And
clear?
he just doesn't understand.
JR, have you been pretty clear about it and he's just not getting it? Or do you think you've been kind of nervous to really to really say it?
We had a long conversation about even before I moved out. I was there for like 2 days. We talked about it, and then 2 days later, when I moved out, and that same day that I moved out, we had another long conversation about the whole thing and the reasons why I wanted to, to get out. And he seemed to understand at that point, but then he goes back, and because we remain in communication, he remains with a state of mind that there is a possibility that things will eventually work out, and I'm going to move back in. So how do you express and make him understand that?
Well, it's actually not.
It's over.
It's not incredibly surprising to me that he might be confused at this point, because just based off of what you're telling us, I mean, there's still so much that's shared between the two of you guys, and especially if you're living in the same house.
Right.
Pretty much everything in your lives is still operating as it once had. And if that's what he's experiencing, then he's going to keep having the emotional experience that the two of you are together, even though intellectually he knows that this relationship is over for you. Emotionally, it's still going to feel that is what's happening, that the two of you are still together, or that there will be, a chance for there to be some sort of, opportunity to get back together
Yeah.
again. So my suggestion to you would be try to figure out, as realistic as possible, what opportunity there might be for some sort of shift or change. If you can leave, maybe that's something you might want to consider. Or if there's any way that you can start to represent very actively in your life with him that there's some sort of separation, that there is no longer that relationship there anymore, then try to employ that.
Okay.
Yeah. JR, your boyfriend or your ex sounds just like me in a relationship.
Like unable to get it.
I think the reason why he is so clinged on still is, I don't mean to like boast about myself, but he was pretty much stay at home, and I was, the only one working.
Got it.
I was the only one maintaining the household. So
Yeah.
now that he's like has to work and has to hustle, then now it's become something like, oh my God.
Totally.
Damn,
JR, you're a caretaker, aren't you?
Unfortunately.
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean it's easy. It's easy, especially in
Sometimes I don't know if, it's like it's a good thing and it's a bad thing.
Well, look, I'm just gonna say this, and then we can kind of wrap it up. But I would say that it's easy, especially as somebody who tends to be a caretaker, to find ourselves in these caretaking roles with other people, where we want to nurture, we want to be there for them, we want to kind of help lift them up, and we start actually taking on their own emotional work in a way, emotional work, and maybe even financial work, and all the rest of it too, where we eventually look around and we realize we've taken on so much work, too much work, and we're exhausted, and then we become resentful of the other person.
And real quick question, why do people do that? Like, what's the draw for a caretaker person? Like,
the draw for it is because it provides us with an opportunity to show that we're valuable. Look what I can do.
Totally.
I can really help out somebody else. I can really be such a great support for somebody else. But what happens is that's actually not support. It starts, by the way, JR, I'm not saying this is you, but it begins to dip into it can begin to dip into a little bit of what we call codependent tendencies. Which is I'm really gonna start taking on your emotional work, so I can make sure that I'm fostering a level of dependency from you, because that way I know that now I've got my anchor. I'm secure in somebody's life.
Totally.
I am indispensable, and if that's happening, then I can feel secure. But what happens is that when we use that means of feeling secure in a relationship, we're not worthy and valuable because of what we can do for other people. Our birthright is that we are valuable. So
Gotcha.
whenever we start looking externally to try and prove our worth, there's something off about that. And especially in this instance, because then we get exhausted and we get resentful of the other person. And then it leads to,
Get burnt out.
and it leads to that. So, JR, I would say if there's any part of that you might connect with or can relate to at all, maybe check in on that, because we then can, easily repeat some of these patterns in our relationships unless we can maybe kind of check in on some of our stuff too,
Yep.
Awesome. All right, JR, thank you so much for calling in. We appreciate that. It was a great question.
Thanks, Matt.
You got it.
Thanks, JR. Good luck.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
That was a tough one.
I have another one, actually. We had somebody that messaged us, and it's kind of a lengthy one, but I found it relatable. So this is coming from @Brizzle21, and he wants to know, I was the one dumped after a 9-month relationship. I felt completely blindsided. We had just had a great weekend with friends the weekend before the breakup. It didn't end with an argument or infidelity. He said that he didn't feel connected anymore. How do I deal with overwhelming feelings of rejection and inadequacies? I feel unwanted and undesirable. Should I end all social media connection? I continue to look at his Facebook activity.
Matt points at me. Matt, he knows that's my weakness.
I continue to look at his Facebook activity, and some of his posts makes me feel like they're directed towards me, even though I'm sure that it's not so. How do I deal with the thoughts that he's moving on so soon and that he's possibly hooking up? This makes me feel like we meant nothing. What do you think, Jimmy?
I totally relate to that, and I get both sides of it. And I think he is vocalizing what I was afraid, like my worst fear,
which
about
is
saying, hey, the connection's not there anymore, Because
that the other person would feel these things.
Because he was even saying in his list there was no infidelity, there was no,
Yeah, it sounds like his partner was really open, honest, direct about the fact that it's just not there, 9 months, it's not feeling right anymore. So the first thing that I would say to this is, we are not responsible for how other people feel. I can't control how you feel. No matter what I say, no matter what I do, no matter how I act, I am not going to be able to, have you feel any particular way. I mean, there might be some ways that I can kind of manipulate something, but I'm not responsible for that. So all I can do is make sure that I'm showing up directly and honestly and vulnerably about the fact that, maybe like this person's partner did, I don't feel the connection. It's not there for me anymore. And to just say that, it's going to be hurtful. So there's that. Yeah. I can't control how hurtful it's going to be or not. But, obviously, use a little finesse and be artful about it and be considerate about how you're saying it and, the approach that you're taking. But inevitably, when you come up to a certain point and you've been able to check all those boxes off and can be kind and compassionate and empathetic, there's a certain point that I can't control anymore. And then that's, the feelings are going to happen as they will anyway. And so also for @Brizzle21, I would say, because the question is how do you deal with those feelings of rejection and inadequacy? It's so normal whenever there's a breakup to feel, what we were saying before too, is to really doubt our own worth and our own value and, how much did we fail and how much was I not good enough if this person wants to leave me? Those are really, really normal feelings. Open up and talk about it. Talk about it with your friends. Have these conversations, not in a way that you just keep spinning about it, but, have real conversations. And also check in, maybe therapy is an opportunity to be able to check in on some of those things too, where, we tend to project a lot of our stuff out onto the relationships that we're in. So when they don't continue on, we can feel like, oh, okay, well, there's the measure of our failure.
Yeah, totally.
What do you think about the social media thing? He's asking what should he do?
I was just thinking, I mean, I'm the worst person to give advice on that because I think I said on the show, my ex blocked me on every social media outlet, and I looked him up through Venmo like a crazy person because I was like, I want to see a picture. But I think it's good not to know.
What were you looking when you were doing that? What were you looking for? Look retrospectively.
I don't
what do you
even
think
know,
you were searching
Matt,
for?
Honestly, I don't even know. I liked that he still existed. I don't know. Like, it's just, I mean, partly I think was curiosity. Like, did he? Because to block someone on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, like it's just pressing a button. I don't know what I'm about to say. I was about to be like, it's a lot of work, but it really isn't. But it's like, they're definitely setting a boundary. So then like I thought about Venmo and I was like, did he go to that level? Like, did he, not want to see like when I paid like my roommate for like, reimbursement checks for like picking up chips? Like, I was just curious.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So I think that I was curious about that, like how far did he go, and also I missed him,
Totally.
And I feel like I'm like blocked from seeing him, or even it's like old pictures of like me and him like don't always come up if it's because like he's erased from. So that's what's hard about social.
So even loss in general of a relationship, but even losing then some of the
and
physical
Facebook
evidence of
does
it.
this thing, and I'm sure like you guys have dealt with it, where it's like see your memories and like you see your ex.
This happened 3 years ago, and it's a happy picture with
your ex. It's this photo of me and my ex like smiling and laughing with my friends, and it's like, oh, you missed that.
I know. It's like Facebook's emotional terrorism.
Yeah, it's totally emotional terrorism.
Yeah. Oh, we've got a call.
Cool.
Hey, caller.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. How are you?
Hi. Hey, I'm well. How are you guys?
Good. What's your name and where you call from?
My name is Louis, and I'm calling from California.
Yeah, Louis.
Is it Louis?
Yes.
Louis. Awesome.
Where in California?
Oh, in Bakersfield. Sorry.
Aw.
Cool.
That's great.
So, hey, Louis, what's up?
Yeah,
What's your question?
So, okay, so let me start from the beginning. I was in a 5-year long-distance relationship, and it worked out perfectly. We saw each other, I don't know, 2-3 times a month, anywhere from 2 days to 30 days.
Mm-hmm. Whoa, 30
and
days.
I thought it worked out really well.
How long distance was it? Where was he?
Florida.
Oh, okay.
So I thought everything was fine, and then one night he flew here, and then it's like, I'm not happy, and we need to end things. So I was totally blindsided.
And you had done the relationship for 5 years long distance?
Say that again?
You had done the relationship 5 years, always long distance, like pretty much without stop?
Yes. Yeah, without stop. No problems, no, I'm getting tired of this, no, Matthew, I would actually, like, love, like, a private session with you sometime to, like, go in depth into this. But, so one of the reasons that he told me we were breaking up was because we had different interests, and I don't understand why that's always such a big problem, because that's the second time that that I've ended a relationship and they've used that as an excuse or a reason to end the relationship.
What did he say were the different interests?
Say that again?
What did he say was the different interests?
I'm really into pop culture and I like fashion. And I know that's like such a typical like gay thing to say, but it's not the like, ooh, girl, Beyonce, she looked fierce, not like that type of fashion.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I really, I follow Fashion Week. I know, I can recognize designers. I know the influences. I
and
know
regardless,
music,
whatever, if that's what you're into, that's so cool, who cares if someone thinks it's typical?
And I never push that on anybody that I've ever dated. Like, can I talk about something that happened at Fashion Week or something that I saw in like a magazine or whatever?
Yeah,
right.
But I don't understand why that's always held against me when he didn't have, he had completely different interests, but I always took part in his interests. So we would go to shooting ranges and we'd go to car shows and I learned to fly and kayaking and all this, like, and I totally enjoyed it. At first I was like, no, I don't want to shoot a gun. And I did it and I loved it, or not loved it, but I had fun.
Totally. Well, you were open to the interests of of your partner.
Yeah. But I don't understand why me liking fashion is such a like, oh, well, sorry, that's a deal breaker.
Well, I mean, okay, look, here's the thing. There's a lot of judgment that can come up within our community, right? Especially, we've talked about, our very first show was talking about femme shaming. So anything that really traditionally tends to be the interests or expression of women, so something like fashion, could be something that can be used against us, anybody that might have that as an interest. Because the idea is that if there's anything that's reflective of the feminine, then that means that you are less than, you're less valuable, and all the rest of that, just because of misogyny, right? So I mean, that's where some of that can come from. It's interesting too that he was comfortable dating you from a distance. So I'm not sure like how much overlap there was in personal lives, or when you guys saw each other, if you guys were just kind of exclusively hanging out with each other, or how integrated you were into each other's personal lives or not. But it's interesting that had happened for so long, and then after a certain point, it seemingly had been too much.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, because literally everything was fine, and then it was just like, I got that the distance got to be a problem,
right?
But it was never like, I'm getting tired. It was just, I'm tired of it, and that's it.
And then
do you ever
feel like,
oh, sorry. Did you ever feel like that wasn't the real reason, Lewis? Like, that he just used that, because it sounds so to me, and I'm just an outsider, like, he dated you for 5 years. So it's not like you just like surprised him with this interest like 4.5 years into it. Like, you are who you are. So for him to say 5 years later, like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and like, everybody that knew us was completely like, when I told people, they were like, what the fuck happened? Because they thought we were going to get married. Like, everybody around us thought we were on the track to getting married.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like you said, you were blindsided by it, and he's giving you this explanation that it has something to do with just different interests, and it's coming out of nowhere, and it kind of sounds like it's a bit of a mindfuck.
A bit of a what?
A mindfuck.
Yeah, it's been a difficult 8 months, so I don't know. I still like am like replaying it all in my head, like trying to figure out what went wrong.
So let me.
But I know that's like.
Yeah, so let me ask you this question, because we are inherently averse to anything that's ambiguous. So when we don't have the answers for anything, we're scared of any big question marks. Our tendency is to fill in the blanks, right? Like we kind of make certain assumptions just because at a baseline it helps us feel like we have some sense about what happened. So that said, where does your mind go? Where does it immediately jump to about the assumptions of why this happened?
It jumps around because he never came out and said like I want to marry you or we're going to get married, but he would ask me like, what if I proposed right now? What would you say? And I would say, well, yeah, I'd say yes, and he'd say, okay, good. Or he would say, we'd make like cute little videos or whatever, and he'd be like, well, let's check back in a year and see when we're getting married, or he would make comments like that. So it wasn't like
Totally.
it wasn't like marriage was never brought up.
Yeah. I mean, look, what a
But it
tease,
was-
right? The fact that he's even bringing up marriage or having these kinds of
Yeah.
conversations, and then out of nowhere pulls out and just doesn't want to be any part of this. We could go on and on and on and on and on about what it could be, right? Like he's somebody who tends to date somebody who's long distance, and after a while decided that he couldn't do it anymore. Like maybe there's some sort of fear of commitment, or there's some real fear of intimacy when things were inevitably reaching a point where you have to shit or get off the pot. He was getting off because it was too much to handle. Or he was really incredibly, without you realizing it, was wrestling with all kinds of internalized homophobia and thought you were too queenie because you were into fashion or whatever. We could go on and on and on with all of the reasons why it might have happened. We might not ever know. There's a great chance of that. But my question to you is, where does your mind go?
I blame myself because my last relationship also lasted 5 years. So like I've put this like, okay, I have a 5-year shelf life expiration tag on myself now because
Totally.
of both relationships.
Oh my God.
Was I think you had alluded to the last relationship ending similarly because of different interests?
That contributed to it. He was not, I don't know if saying unhealthy person was the right word, but he had some serious problems.
Really?
Okay.
Like, yeah. Like I mean, I don't know like a textbook definition of bipolar, but I imagine that that's what he was, the last relationship.
Do you ever
Got
feel
it.
He would like literally just, what's that?
I was gonna say, Lewis, do you ever feel like you're attracted to unavailable people at all?
No.
No? Okay. Because I am, so I'm always curious
No.
about...
Got it.
I kind of always wondered too, because the one that the long distance, he dated women up until like 10 years ago. He said he had zero clue that he was gay.
Got it. Okay. I think, Lewis, if I could just, if I could say, I think that it's actually, it's not a bad question that Jimmy's asking you, and not necessarily in terms of the traditional sense of availability, in terms of maybe being like emotionally open or present or available for a relationship, but in terms of actually being able to be in an emotional place where you can, more authentically, in certain ways, connect with somebody. And if you happen to find yourself maybe, I'm totally going out on a limb here, if you happen to find yourself maybe getting into relationships with people who, kind of give a little bit but aren't, kind of totally there or aren't totally available to be in a relationship, it might be something to take stock on. So, and so I would just check in on that, especially if there might be some patterns that you're noticing from relationship to relationship. It's a good thing to question, okay, what might be going on here? What might be some of the things that I might be attracted to that inevitably aren't working out for me? But, and then this could be something that you could get into in therapy with a therapist about, what are some of the things that I'm drawn to about these kinds of relationships, and how might I go about sifting through that in a different way where I don't have to keep replaying the same psychodrama in my relationships. And that's a very different way of assessing maybe some of what's going on. But that requires a little exploration. That requires an emotional vulnerability. That requires having somebody who can help you process through that. And it's also a very different thing than just defaulting to, I've got a 5-year expiration. What's wrong with me? I'm broken and I'm damaged. It's really easy for, especially as gay men, it's very easy for us to go to that explanation, that immediate thinking that I'm broken and that's why these things aren't working. You know?
Okay.
So, Lewis,
thanks so much for
yeah,
calling
thank
in.
you for
And I'll
calling.
just say this on air. If you date Lewis from Bakersfield, you are not allowed to leave after 5 years because of his interests. I'm just saying it. You've heard it here. It's done. So there you go.
He likes fashion.
So get over it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Lewis.
Thanks for calling. Good luck, dude.
All right. So I believe that we're at that time.
Hi, it's your favorite person. Okay, so
All right.
you guys know the rules. We will give Matt this bell. He will be doing therapy on our very fun in-house puppet, Tristan. And then when Matt becomes uncomfortable, he will... And let me see, is this a good spot for the puppet? Okay, cool. That's a good spot, right? Okay.
Looks great.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, Tristan. How you doing this week?
I'm kind of depressed.
Oh, what's going on?
Well, Valentine's Day is coming up in about 6 or 7 months. And I want to get my ex a Valentine's Day card.
Okay.
I mean, we broke up a few months ago, but it's like, I'm thinking about him. So it'll just say something like, I'm here, I'm thinking of you. When you're ready for a friendship, I think it's on the table.
Okay, so you're interested in having a friendship with your ex?
Yeah, I'm open, I'm available. I can't see him in person because there's a restraining order on me, but I want to get this card to him if I can.
Okay, wait. Let's assume for a minute, even if you didn't have a restraining order, which, by the way, you should not be reaching out to him at all, and we could talk about that another time. Let's assume for a minute that you didn't. Maybe it might be a good idea to, if you wanted to pursue a friendship, that you don't have to have a note be attached to a love holiday, because that might be confusing messages.
Well, I have a bunch of extra cards from when I bought them in bulk, and so it's like, what do you want me to do, Matt? Throw these cards out? Like, I'm being 100% serious with you.
If that's what you have to do, if maybe that's not necessarily the best way to communicate that you're looking for a friendship.
Well, to me, it's a love holiday, and I'm telling you, this guy would always come back to get fucked by me.
I feel like fucking, when we talk about fucking, that's always the time to end that conversation.
I mean, he's just like a really horny puppet.
He's got needs. All right, so
have I told you? It makes me happy that Tristan has an Instagram account, and it makes me happy that like this puppet is like has more friends than some of the people who were mean to me in high school on Instagram, and I'm just like, how did this happen? It's like such a sweet victory for me.
Okay, we'll talk about that on the next show.
That's obviously my work to do.
But we are all out of time for our show today, so definitely be sure to check back in next Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific, and we are going to have our next show then.
And make sure you're following us on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, at Into Talk Show. And really reach out. Feel free if you guys have ideas of shows that you want to see, questions that you guys have. I mean, this is the whole idea behind the show, is that we come to you and it's just a conversation. So hit us up.
Totally. Definitely. And also remember that today is a chance to uplift somebody else so we can all rise together.
Because if you don't, you're absolute trash. Dun, 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 dun.